So I am Stephanie Zamora from Laguna Beach, California, and I'd like to welcome you to the Braver Angels Film Club. And as Donna said, Donna, Ivan, and Molly are co-leaders. Ron is also a fellow leader, but is unavailable right now. So for those of you who are here for the first time, the moderators will be posing various questions. Tonight, we're lucky enough to have the director here from the film. She'll be introduced. And then if you'd like to speak, please raise your electronic hand that's down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll call on you. For now, please mute your microphone and then unmute if you're called on. We'll be following the Braver Angels ground rules for discussions. We're here to understand each other, not change anybody's mind or to win points. We will take turns and not interrupt others. Due to time limitations, we may not get to everyone who wants to speak. We do want to give a chance to speak to someone who hasn't spoken over someone who has. So sometimes there's people that want to participate in lots of questions, but we will kind of try to give people a chance to talk who haven't been able to answer. So keep your remarks brief. Let's say 2 minutes the most. We'll have a timekeeper that will help kind of stay on track. So hopefully that works for everybody. We're here to discuss Undivide Us. Hopefully you've already seen it. And so as I said, the film's director is here. And so we'll begin with our introduction of the director with Molly.
Thank you. I'm excited to introduce Christy. So Christy Kendall is, as we mentioned before, the director of Undivide Us and president at Christy Kendall and Co. and Company. And she is an expert in content production and storytelling with over 25 years experience, actually. So Christy started her career as a journalist, producing for ABC News 2020, and in 2009 became John Stussel's executive producer at Fox Business, where she launched his highly rated weekly show. In 2019, so about 5 years ago, she started her own company with the mission of, quote, connecting hearts and minds to ideas that matter, which totally has Braver Angels vibes. Her company has produced, little plug there. Her company has produced and directed dozens of video projects on topics as varied as 3D printing housing, feature documentary Project Home, human rights in Hong Kong, the film being Cato Institute, it was a Cato Institute Friedman Prize piece on Jimmy Lai, and criminal record expungement. Documentary short was Clean Slate. And I'll put all this in the chat, by the way, just so everybody can look these up later. And her most recent project, which we saw on Divide Us, is a feature documentary tackling toxic polarization and demonstrating how each of us, through our communities and individual actions, can stop it. Christy serves on 2 nonprofit boards and lives in Brooklyn, New York, with her husband, 2 teenagers, dog, and cat, all in the same apartment. Very exciting. So a little bit about her. I'm going to, again, plop that in the chat so you can refer back to it. And let's do some questions here.
Okay, so thank you, Molly. I will be asking questions on behalf of the co-leaders to Christy Kendall this evening. And it'll be about 15 minutes or so of questions that we ask her. And then for the next 15 minutes, you all are going to get a chance to ask questions of Christy. So keep track of what you want to ask her. And then after that, we co-leaders are going to take turns asking questions of you, the viewers, in terms of, well, we're going to be asking you what you thought of it and some other specific questions about the movie Undivide Us. Okay, so here's the first one, Christy. Why did you decide to make this movie?
Thank you so much, Donna and Molly. Thanks for that awesome intro. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I love Braver Angels. I love what you all are about, and I love how you're trying to be change in the world. And it's related to the question because that's literally why I made this film. A few years ago, was feeling really, really scared as I saw the state of conversation in this country, and I couldn't help but think, what kind of world are we leaving for my children to grow up into, and for their children. And so I started doing some research, because that's what journalists do when they have these questions that start itching the back of their heads. And I came across the data that I'm sure you all are pretty familiar with, which is that there's a very small number of people on the polls who really are toxically polarized, and they create an enormous amount of noise that makes all the people in the middle, the 80% of us, the exhausted majority, as some people call us, that they make us feel like we can't say anything without being screamed at, or and so that chills us from stepping into the civil square. And then there's also a lot of data about how then that actually cultivates more polarization, actually, as people speak to each other less and less. And I thought to myself, well, this is like a negative cycle of like badness, right? So what can I do to help stop that? And I thought, well, you make films, Christy. What if you went around the country and showed people having really hard conversations, in the way that you theoretically believe that Americans want to and do? So put your money where your mouth is. Like, if you really think that Americans can do this, get out there. And so I've been blessed to have an incredible career, which means that sometimes people will give me money to go and do projects like crazy like this. And so I had the funding, and so I thought, okay, let's see how this goes. And I had actually, up to that point, I had kind of sworn that I would never make another feature-length documentaries, because they are a lot of work. They are a lot of pain. It really is like deciding to have a child. Nobody wants to be like a little bit pregnant, right? Like you have to really get the baby through, in terms of the documentary. But uh those of you who saw the movie saw what happened, right? I mean, we tried to pick places that had more of a reputation, or had a history of having polarization at some of their core. So that's why we went to Georgia and Pennsylvania and Arizona. We tried to pick places where these issues had come up, and we did not shy away from the issues. We talked about parents' role in education, which of course led us into the trans issue. We talked about guns. We talked about immigration. We talked about abortion. We talked about all the things that we, at the time that we were filming this, thought would be the most controversial. And I'll answer another question that people often ask, and then I'll kick it back to you all. People often will ask me, well, were there like secretly fights that ended up on the cutting room floor that you just didn't include? And the honest to God answer is no. And I've had this verified because I've done screenings with people from the focus groups in the room. People were respectful. They legitimately disagreed, but we did a lot of the things that Braver Angels does in terms of setting the scene, right? We didn't expect people to come in and change their minds. We just expected them to be respectful and to listen with an open heart, and to try to actually engage with people on the other side with the same kind of human dignity. And it worked out kind of amazingly well, and we ended up feeling pretty hopeful about the future of this country. So
That's excellent, Christy. And as a Braver Angels, this does not surprise us. And I would never have thought to ask you if there were a bunch of fights that were left out on the cutting room floor. We know that this can go relatively smoothly compared to what people think. I do have my next question is, how are the film's participants recruited and selected? And what were they told about this event and their role in it?
So that's a great question. They were, It was actually a really expensive part of the making of the film because I didn't trust myself or anyone I know in my circles to do the recruiting. And so we actually used a professional like focus group recruiting company, which is very expensive to use if you're for a documentary like this. But I'm really, really grateful that we did because it was the only way that we could really ensure that we were getting what we looked for, right? That we were legitimately getting people from the right and the left, that we were getting people from kind of the demographics we were looking for, as much, you know, as you can with any group of like 6 people, right? Like sitting at a table. I thought it was really, it was a worthwhile investment, and I'm grateful that we did it.
Well, we would have to agree with you. Another question, and you alluded to this a little bit just before, is how are you, so you've made both documentaries and you've made fictional movies. How are documentaries harder to make, and how are they easier to make than fictional movies?
So I've never directed a
Oh,
narrative.
you produced?
I produced them.
Okay.
To me, like both are really, 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 really hard. As a journalist and with my background, I'm so much more comfortable in the documentary space. Um, the thing that's different is that a documentary is entirely, if you're doing it the way that I do it, which is I do it like the way a journalist does. Like I don't totally know what's going to happen at the end of the day. It's not like I work it all out and script the whole thing in advance. A lot of it is kind of what happened and then following that story, right? So I didn't know that Matt and Celicia were going to sit next to each other in the guns discussion, and that Matt was going to be a big Second Amendment proponent, and Celicia was going to have had, you know, someone very close to her, the father of one of her children, killed by gun violence 3 months before. I had no idea that was going to happen. And it organically happened. I also didn't know, for example, I didn't know that nobody was going to change their mind about anything. Like I was kind of, I threw that out there as a question for the moderator at the end. They were like, you know, do we want to ask anything else? And I was like, can we ask them, did anybody change their mind? And then it was just so defining of a thing that then we included that in the broader film. Yeah, so to me, I just like the exploratory like process of documentary more. I don't know. I think both are really hard to make, you know. So I wouldn't say which one is easier so that's my take on that question.
Oh, okay, fair enough, fair enough. Um, and now what has been the response from the audiences that you screened for?
It's really, really interesting. So uh I mean, in the making of the film, we chatted about this a little bit before everybody joined the call. We were so concerned about how audiences would receive it, as particularly audiences on the right. And so we did do some test screenings before the film actually launched. And so like a year ago, we did a test screening at kind of a larger conservative gathering, and was very well attended, and they loved the film, but they said that they were pretty sure that people on the left wouldn't like the film at all. And they said it with enough like veracity that it actually kind of freaked us out, to be just totally honest. And so we were like, okay, well, we better schedule a screening as soon as possible with people on the left. And so then we did a screening like that in DC about 2 weeks later. And it was funny, it's someone from the Arnold Foundation, which is kind of a left-leaning foundation, and she is particularly a left human. She raised her hand after the screening and she said, "This film was amazing. I loved it. But I have to tell you, I'm very concerned that people on the right will not like the film." And so at that point, we were like, we just could exhale a little bit. We were like, okay, if both sides think that the other side isn't going to like it, then I think we're on to something here. So
That's wonderful. Thank you, Christy. And I've got one more question for you. Right now, you're working on another film, and you're filming people with differing political views, sharing the same raft, going down a river, working together to keep that float or that raft going and not tipping over,
Yep.
and then sharing a gathering afterwards. This is so wonderful. I know you're still in process of making that movie. Could you please tell us about that project?
Yeah, it's really, really fun. Actually, the guys from Team Democracy, actually, Chris and Ken are the two, they're brother-in-laws, and one is on the right and one is on the left. And they started this thing called Team Democracy. And one of those two brothers has run a whitewater rafting like company, actually in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley for his whole career. He built it from scratch. It's beautiful, and it's a lovely company. And they thought to themselves, and the other brother-in-law, like he was a whitewater rafting guide. So they love like outdoor things. And they just said, why don't we put like people from both sides in a boat where, they're trapped with each other for a few hours and see what happens. And so then they saw Undivide Us, and they came to me and they were like, you have to make a documentary about this. And I was like, hold on there. Let's get to be friends first. And but we have been working together on this now, and I love them, and I love this actually. There is something magical about putting people in a whitewater raft. Um, and it's interesting because people have said, well, could you just go hiking? Could you go biking? Yes, like go and do other stuff with people who are different than you. But it is not quite the same as being like in a enclosed space where you have to use teamwork, or else you're going to fall out of the boat and get very wet. It's magical. And people come in kind of like, I don't know what this is all going to be about, and we're going rafting for America, but we don't really know. And they leave like the transformation is remarkable. We actually did a gathering just last week of people who had gone on the Nantahala, and how engaged and excited they are about trying to help spread this to other people in the world, and to do follow-ups. It's like it's pretty awesome. So I know not everybody, whitewater rafting is not everybody's cup of tea, but figuring out these spaces for engagement is really exciting. Yeah, we had Senator Tom Tillis go a week and a half ago, and he went. Who did we pair him? We paired him with the Democratic former mayor of Charlotte. And they had some really interesting conversations. We've had community organizers go with like their Republican congressmen folks. I mean, it's been lovely. It's great.
It sounds lovely. Make sure you let us know when that film is completed, and the BA Film Club. I'm pretty sure we're going to want to talk about that film as well. Okay, so now I'm going to turn things over to Stephanie, and she is going to be soliciting questions from you, the audience, to Christy. Okay, so go for it, Stephanie.
Yes, if anybody has a question, you can raise your hand. I will ask one that's, David, I saw your question in the chat, so I'll go ahead and why don't you go ahead and unmute and ask it out loud.
Hi, there may be more than one David, but I'm assuming you're talking.
David Barat, yes, David
Okay.
Barat.
Okay. Well, first, Christy, congratulations on the movie. You did a fabulous job. My question is, what percentage of the discussion groups you actually included in the movie? Some of the discussion groups, and I'll cite the one that comes to mind, the greatest is the one with Dre, the black gay man who's conservative, and the white older school teacher. This was a very very interesting combination there, and you focused a lot on that relationship. But how many other groups did you do that didn't work out so well and you just didn't include?
So we included, so there were a total of 6 focus groups. And each focus group did about 3 hours of discussions. And we included material from all of the focus groups. There was one of the ones in Arizona we didn't include as much because I mean, so they appear, but they appear pretty briefly. It was just the folks weren't good. They didn't really talk very well. Like it wasn't because we didn't like what they said. It was more because it was just like painful. Which I think just happens in focus groups sometimes. I shouldn't say that because like this is being recorded and somebody from that one could see this. But anyway, like so the reason for us not including something was just simply because like there was not enough engagement. That would have been the best thing. Does that answer your question though? Or did I miss it?
No, it does, and I'm a little, the fact that you included at least part of all 6 groups, I think is impressive, because a lot of times you see these person on the street kind of things, and and they show 5 or 6 representative or people that they talk to that make a certain point that they want to make, and that they've probably talked to 3, 4, 5 times that many people. So I was just wondering, how big your denominator was.
Yeah, fair question.
Thanks, David. Ingrid, go ahead. Ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if you considered at any point including a mention of Braver Angels as, a good path forward for some people that might want to try it.
Yeah, I mean, I love Braver Angels. Like, go Braver Angels. They're awesome. If we don't have a link to Braver Angels on the resources website, we will add one. You just send me the info.
I couldn't find it there.
Let me look. I mean, let me look at the resources. Well, I won't do it right now. But like my take on this is more is more, and I'm not trying to not mention anybody ever. Like I want everybody to engage in this space of like humanization of like people who just like as much as we can. And so if you have a great idea, like let's get it out there. And if it's not on our resources page, let me know and I will try to get it on there. That's how I feel about Braver Angels. I love Braver Angels. I think it's great. So, but why I didn't put it in the film in particular though, is because I don't want to be myopic about it though. Like I want this more is more, and to have it be something that could be dynamic. And a film is not something that can like continually be changing unless you have like endless buckets of money lying around. A film has to get locked in and like get delivered. Now a website is easy to change. So that's why we have that, like there's a slide at the end of the film that's like, for more resources, go to undivideusmovie.com or whatever, because then I can be dynamic there. And so we've added lesson plans. We actually have lesson plans now from both Mercatus and Living Room Conversations there. So like there's a lot of high school teachers who are screening this in their classrooms right now. And we've like said, hey, once you get lesson plans, send them to us and we'll include them there. I'm excited to have. I think it's going to take all of us doing what we can to save this country. So like, I'm excited to be part of it.
Thank you. Margaret, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here today with us. The film was such a a breath of fresh air, you know, just so appreciative to have kind of diverse perspectives to kind of counteract just like the myopia of a lot of the messaging we're getting. And I admit I had something come up a little bit beforehand, so I didn't get to digest it quite as thoroughly. So hopefully I'm not treading over anything super repetitive, but I was so intrigued by the kind of methodology that was used in the focus groups of sort of having folks ask having folks tell one another what they thought was in the other person's mind and like what they thought was why they arrived at the position. And um I was just wondering if there were any interesting sort of little backstories about how that was arrived at, or kind of anything about that would be great to hear about.
Yeah. So we actually worked with a company called Heart and Mind Strategies, and they are like a public, they do all this kind of like survey, and they do these kinds of focus groups all over the place. They've never filmed them before, and they've never done it the way that kind of we set it up. We worked collaboratively with them. But the discussion method that's used is they call it triadic illumination, and it's comes from marriage counseling originally, and they developed it to cultivate discussions around abortion, that they had been charged with really trying to cultivate productive conversations with people who deeply disagreed about the topic of abortion. And they found that using traditional methods were they weren't able to do that, that people would become really angry and upset, and that they would devolve into like non-productive places. And so that's how they developed triadic illumination. And I think that it's just a great way. I have to tell you, like, I've used it in my own like family discussions, you know, where I'll be sitting at the table and I'll just be like, you tell me if I hear you, what you're saying. So this is what I think you're saying. You're saying, you know, and then you're looking at somebody across the table who's a real human being, and they're hearing you do your best to say what they think. And there's something magical that just happens there. It's like if you are being authentic and sincere, you know, you just even whether you're the listener or the speaker, it creates a connection that I just think it's really, really magical. There's just something in the like hearing someone who's another human being try to get your position right. And then you can be like, oh, well, it wasn't quite right. But you're still, at least there's something, I think, in most of us that gives that person grace if you see that they were trying to do it authentically, you know? So that's the methodology.
That's great, Christy. Thanks. Carrie Lieb, go ahead.
Yeah, Christy, I thought this was a great film. I was really, it made me wish that we had more of a mixture of, like our demographic isn't as mixed as your audience that, you know, I mean, that the members of all the different discussion groups. So I was like, oh, I wish we could like somehow flesh out Braver Angels. So I don't know if it's like, I don't know how to do that, but my question was very similar to Margaret's, and I find that's really interesting, and I saw in the chat that comes right out of a Red Blue workshop, which I've done those workshops, but I don't remember doing that activity, because I thought, and maybe it was because the two people, I remember only seeing that once when they asked the question. I wish that I had seen it more, because I thought that was such a great, and it was between like a Black woman and a white guy. And I thought, well, maybe she didn't show it more because I felt like that could have been really gone south. Like, you're making these assumptions about me and because I'm a Black woman. And I don't know, it was just really interesting. She didn't take it like that, and they ended up being friends, you know, which I thought was cool. But, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I wish you had explored that more, because I thought
It is interesting because I mean, and I've actually had somebody at a screening say, you know, that was really triggering for me because like I saw those assumptions that that guy was making. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think that also it probably wasn't triggering for her because they were human beings sitting together in the same space. Like we don't know from an audience perspective, like what was said, you know, exactly when they first met before they sat down. Did they say, "Oh, I'm from that neighborhood near you," or did he kind of know what when she said, you know, what part of Pittsburgh she lived in, you know? So I think that there was just probably more context and grace to that interaction. But I think, you know, I take that as a fair critique too.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting too that she, you know, she owned a gun and here's the guy, you know, all that, you know, was really interesting too. So just a lot of really great, I thought it was a great film. Thank you so much.
And they too, the two of them legitimately did become friends. They people have asked if they were like romantically involved. They were not romantically involved, but they did attend each other's weddings, like
Really?
in the time since the film, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Power of conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carrie. I think we have time for one more of this segment. Anna Casile, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to ask you about the two gentlemen who were sort of, they showed the history, they were sort of facilitators. I kind of had the impression watching the movie that this was their idea and that they came together and then found you to make a documentary about it. I just want to check, am I hearing that in fact that's not kind of how it happened? You had the idea and then what was your relationship with them and how did that all sort of work? Because I'm feeling a little confused about it.
Yeah. So they knew each other. So what happened was Tony Woodleaf wrote this book called I, Citizen. And I, Citizen was what definitely triggered my brain about this phenomena in terms of like that I wanted to make something that would showcase like productive pluralistic conversation, productive conversation in the civil space. So Ben is like, I would say if you ever want to talk to like a pluralism savant who literally knows everything there is to know in this space, that person is Ben Klutzy. Like he is, so not only had he read Tony's book, he had like thoughts. So like I got connected to him and then I was like, oh, these two people, like Tony kind of has more of the like, he's more of a like commentator, like he's written a book, but it was more in this like citizenship area. Ben actually is the most well-read academic like person I've ever met in this space. And he runs a center on pluralism at the time. Now he's actually been promoted. He's the head of the Mercatus Center. But like he has a podcast. So he was an incredible resource also because you know, I come from the school of, you know, like you heard, I was a producer at ABC News 2020. So like, I don't want to just say something in a documentary. I want to have like the academic rigor behind it. And so I could be to Ben, I could be like, okay, I want to know like what happens if we don't get a handle on this? What happens if this really goes south? You know, and he was like, oh, well, you need to talk to Jen Merkashvili at the University of Pittsburgh because she has studied Afghanistan and the Middle East. And Jen is also like studied, like she's incredible. And he was, and then I was like, okay, great. When we go to Pittsburgh, you're going to sit down with her for an interview and we're going to get this, you know, so it was really this kind of collaborative process from there on, but that's kind of how the three of us came together. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And I get it now. Yeah, appreciate that.
Great. Thanks, Anna, for the question. Christy, thanks. So we're at the part of our programming where we turn it over to where we're going to ask some questions of the audience. You know,
I'll take it.
Christy, yeah, Molly, go ahead and take it from here.
Great. And Christy, thanks for fielding all those questions. So first off, we just usually like to start with a general big picture one. I'm curious to hear, what did you think of the movie in general? And also a little more specifically, what were your takeaways from it? So I'll drop these in the chat and we'll take a few answers. By the way, if anyone has any trouble with the raise hand feature, it's down at the bottom, but you can also message us. Usually we can't get people to stop talking about the big picture questions, so we might move on. I'll do a going once, going twice. Yeah, David, go for it.
Okay, I didn't want to monopolize this here at all since I asked the first question. Two thoughts. I think one thought is that I like the fact that the movie brought together a demographic, people of different demographics that's more representative of our country. My experience with Braver Angels, much like tonight's meeting, I just kind of glancing at the gallery in the meeting, besides a couple of you that are moderating, the average age of this group is older than the people that were in the discussion group. I'm not really seeing, on quick glance, I'm not seeing any people of color in the discussion group tonight. I'm not seeing many, not seeing younger people. So, and which is I know Braver Angels tries to reach out and get people from all different demographics, but they often don't. At least my experience, the one in-person workshop I went to was the same demographic. The Zoom meetings I've been to, similar demographic, older, mostly white people. So I was glad that this movie had a more diverse demographic. The one other comment that I had about the movie, although I thought it was, very good, and the importance of people trying to understand each other and communicate respectfully and civilly. There was sort of a downside to it because some of the groups, it sort of brought out the fact that we do have, we are living in a very polarized country, and people on one side are completely oblivious to things that people on the other side are very familiar with, um, and even though they may come to respect each other, it's still very clear that people have very different facts, and that was brought out in the movie, that's part of the problem, is that people on the right and the left are dealing with different facts, and if they have the same facts, they're more inclined to agree. But we don't have the same facts, and I don't know how we change that. But just having respectful discussions, unfortunately, is not going to change that.
Thank you, David. And I want to recommend, based on what you just said, at the end there's a workshop called Walk a Mile in My News. And that's a really cool chance. It's a free online workshop Braver Angels offers. Actually, I don't know if it's online or in person, maybe both, to basically understand each other's news sources and facts better. And Pat, go for it.
Hi, thanks. And just kudos, Christy. I thought the movie was absolutely excellent. I watched it with a friend of mine who's also involved in Braver Angels, and we chatted about it afterwards. The one observation I made, I couldn't help but compare your movie to the documentary that was made about the original Red Blue workshop that Braver Angels did. And it was long. Obviously, their workshop is longer. It's not 3 hours. People spend basically, I think, a weekend together in that one. And it was also, the people were very representational, which was great. But your movie, I liked when you started out by telling us, of course, the data about the fact that really it's only about 20% of people out there who are in that extreme and acting out and what have you, and the rest of us seem to feel like we have to stay pretty quiet, honestly, out of fear, I think, a lot. But the way the movie was put together, I guess you could say, I'm not a film person, so forgive I don't know the technical language, but we both walked away feeling like all the sort of snippets that were in between the parts of the people a lot of it focused on the aggression, you know, the anger and the aggression, like it kept popping up, and then it would go back to the people, and then another quick example of something we all don't like. And so that was the only, I guess if you could say, a critique that bothered me a little bit. I know what you're trying to do with the movie, and I think you absolutely accomplished it in that regard, just, you know, real people talking to each other. But it was sort of like, oh, I don't want to see another scene like that, right? Anyway, just my point.
Thank you for sharing that, Pat. And I want to just encourage people, I'm sure Christy's been making films for enough years, you don't have to sugarcoat stuff too much. So I want to move on to the next question. Are there any techniques from the film you observed that, you know, were used in the discussions that you would like to apply in your own life? And if so, how? So think about different strategies they use both in the discussions themselves, and also there were some more informal ones outside of the discussions where they were becoming closer friends. And think about whether there's, I mean, when I say that and how that's kind of like, you know, is it, yeah, go for it, Donna.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not able to raise my hand as a host here. I loved the technique where you asked somebody on one side of an issue to talk about why they thought somebody on the other side thought the way they did. To me, that was just brilliant, because you're asking someone to humanize and treat as human the person on the other side, and then to kind of enter their mind and think about, you know, why they might think that way. By definition, it's an act of respect, and it's a way to kind of divine what they might be thinking. And if you get it wrong, then they can correct you. And so again, you can better understand where they're coming from. So kudos to that technique.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. Mary, go for it.
Yeah, I like that process as well, but I like the follow-up of asking, was there anything that the person said that surprised you? So the one person has these ideas about why the other person, and then they, you know, qualify it and clarify, you know, kind of say what you got right and what you missed. And then to have to think about, did anything surprise me? Just to me kind of gets both people, just points out that whole notion of we come with preconceived ideas, and really creates a larger, longer space to kind of sit in that and be aware of it, and see what it feels like inside ourselves, and when that's happening, or if it's happening. Yeah, to consider it.
Thank you. I know this wasn't an official technique in the film, and isn't something I've necessarily seen officially done in Braver Angels either, but I also really liked how when two of the people met up who were becoming friends, I know one of them was a school teacher on a porch, I believe, that in other conversations, people didn't always lead with what they would disagree on. You know, they would lead with like, oh, that's my family, or things that they would share. And so the idea was, you know, even though they'd already met and had some of whatever relationship, the idea was to build the positive side of the relationship before going into what they disagree on. And I find that people are ready to just plunge in and say, I don't agree with this person, therefore I don't even want a relationship. Like they block the relationship before they've started. So I thought that was really smart to say, like, yeah, being human first, kind of building on what Donna said. Any other takeaways on the, okay, yeah, we had someone share on, and by the way, don't feel shy, but David also shared the technique of starting with a neutral question, a cat or a dog person. So yeah, having it be kind of like a more generic icebreaker, obviously, is a good technique. So I think we're gonna move on now, unless we have others who want to chat, with a question from Donna.
Thanks, Molly. So here's the question. The film's premise is that toxic polarization is being driven by 20% of the people on the extremes who the news media focuses on. Do you agree or disagree? And if you agree, how do we encourage the news media to report more about the 80% of the people in the middle of the bell curve? Mary, your hand is still up. Do you want to try this one or not?
I mean, I definitely agree with it. And I don't know, I feel like we're struggling with corporate America on that one. I mean, I choose not to watch the news. I mean, I just don't anymore. I read the news. So because I feel passionate about not supporting the drama.
So
I don't
you
know. Yeah.
so you read it, you don't listen to it, but even with reading it, so there's still
I try
drama
to look at
depending on what sources do you use to read the film?
I look at the New York Times and Apple News. I try to get news where I get a variety of sources, and I'll listen to podcasts, public radio, um, um, and more kind of I want to just see the issues in depth. I just steer clear of drama. I'll turn off public radio sometimes when I feel like you're just getting into the, this is all about drama and I need to know facts about the issue, and I'll figure things out myself. I don't need you to tell me how I should feel or, what opinion to have about things. I think the news has gotten too far along in that because they're always only giving you the opinion of some expert on one side of the issue. So it's like I'll gather my own data
Okay.
and then, sort it out that way.
Okay, thank you,
yeah.
Mary. Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
some people coming in the chat talking about other news sources. All Sides is one. The Flip Side is another. And then there's one called readtangle.com. So there are some sources that try and give you both sides and are a little more objective that way. Christy, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in the news media, we have the saying that if it bleeds, it leads, right? Or that you're kind of trained up that nobody tunes in to watch the plane safely land. And I actually want to actively challenge that as much as I can with the news media as well. I think we need to be doing more of celebrating the goodness of Americans towards one another, of celebrating the good news that happens, and not in a Pollyanna-ish way, but in a way that actually says, well, this is a reflection of what actually is happening on the ground. And so in my company, I try to only do stories that do that, and I don't know. I'm just trying to say it as often as possible so so that more people will be inspired and more of us will actually look for that kind of content, because I do think it is a supply, and I think there is an issue of what comes first, the chicken and the egg, right? Because I think the news media has done this for so long in terms of kind of covering the more salacious parts of things, right? The newsworthy parts, as we're trained as journalists to believe. And I do think that is important. I think that we also need to recognize that having a sense of perspective on these things is also important. And that we need to demand more of that kind of content, and say it out loud to anyone who will listen. So I'm
Yeah,
saying
well,
to all y'all.
and then one way to demand, we have to pay for it though. And there's also someone mentioned Ground News is another source, but you have to pay for it. Humanprogress.org, I haven't heard of them before. I'm not sure if you pay for them or not. But we do have to put our money where our mouth is on this issue as well. I'm glad that you have found funding for Undivide Us. and I'm really happy to hear that. Okay, Margaret, what would you like to say?
I just want to respond to the question about whether like I think it was the figure is 20% accurate for how many people are really like driving the polarization. Um, I heard that and I was like, wow, it sounds a bit low to me, although I have not studied it, so I have like no, basis in that way to challenge it. I guess I would just add that, and I think it was later said like, oh, 20% of people kind of answered a polling question in such a way. I think more of us, myself included, are driving it than 20%, in that maybe we're not going out there, we're not the news, and we're not reporting on a gun control issue simply about like some people don't want to ban guns and some people do, but we have a tendency to just repeat those framings in our conversations with people. And so I really try to really just kind of go at things a different way, any way I can. And, sometimes it's just as much as like, even kind of redirecting to like, well, we're at a tense time now in our country, but what happened in like the Great Depression? Like, if you read about stuff that was going on in the 30s, there's a lot of similar issues. We got through that, and so I try to do that whenever possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. We did not have social media in the Great Depression, which is interesting. Carrie, one more. So you'll be our last respondent, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, Christy, I completely agree. So, years ago, I told my dad, hey, let's start a good news newspaper. And he was like, it's never going to sell. Only bad news sells. And I think that that's the assumption. But there are, I've seen, previews at movies that are, because you recycled, X number of dolphins have been, or whatever, like showing that it does matter when you do good stuff, or just like My Unsung Hero on NPR, like showing that there's a lot more good stuff happening than all the bad stuff that the news. So I know that you're saying like, I tell people, but how can we like actively get any ideas for everyone, like any ideas of how we can actively change the model? Because it's just so depressing, and like there's tons of good stuff happening out there, like way more than the bad stuff, and nobody hears about it unless you hear like Instagram, that guy Tank Good News. It's like so nice hearing that good stuff, or but you don't hear that stuff. So I mean, I feel like we should start a movement. I know that that's a really big calling, but I do think that people want to hear good stuff. They're just like over hearing all the negative, yeah. So any
Yeah.
ideas?
Yeah, so I get the flip side. It's sent to my email box every day, and it takes an issue, and it takes news opinions from conservative publications as well as liberal publications on that. And then at the bottom of every day, there's something cute or beautiful or whatever. Like today on the bottom, it was pictures that won the Apple phone pictures of the year. So pictures taken by Apple cell phones, or it could be like cuddly animals, in a nest that a cam is watching eagles hatching in a nest. I mean, in other words, they also with the both sides, right? They also try and include something that will make you smile or laugh or whatever. So that's there, and it's a huge question, Carrie, and I think we need to be talking more about solutions. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to Stephanie for the next question.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes off of what Margaret was saying too, is that, do the participants in the exercises represent the majority of US citizens? Meaning, do we want to try to, even though we may have differing opinions, can we really work this out? Is the are the majority of us more like what we would see reflected in the workshops or not? Kind of throwing that out to the group. What do you think? Molly.
So I'll say with hesitancy, because this is a question I wouldn't want to speak on without more data behind what I'm about to say. But my intuition is that people actually don't like having arguments that get your heart beating fast. Like they don't like being angry. It's not most of us don't find it fun to be angry. Most of us want to engage in intellectual, thoughtful discussion. And in the I'm in a very polarized community. I live in a community in the sort of Cambridge, Somerville area outside Boston. So we're not polarized in the sense of being literally polarized. What I mean to say is it's very left here. But I'll say that when people come into conversations in my community with anyone who disagrees with them, I see very respectful people wanting to engage. And that's purely anecdotal. I can't tell you a lot about it because I don't have a lot of experience with this, firsthand. But the times that I see or hear friends disengage or say they don't want to be involved, a friend of mine told me recently, I don't want to be involved in Brave Angel. She didn't want to come to the things that we do because she just didn't have an interest with talking with people from the other side. I didn't get the sense that it was because she didn't want to have or couldn't have respectful conversation, but she thought it would just be too hard. I think that when people avoid these topics, it's because they don't have the kind of frameworks that a group like Living Room Conversations, which is similar to ours, or BA, or what the group you were working with, Christy, in your movie, people actually aren't trained outside of an organization most of the time in how to debate well. It's a skill, and I found in it going into the real world, I had been trained in it by my parents, but I don't think it's taught most of the time. And I believe that just because I see people afraid to debate because they're afraid a debate will become an argument. So my sense is only in my personal life that it's not like people don't want to have thoughtful conversations, but they just don't know how.
That makes a lot of sense. Anybody else want to weigh in on this question?
Stephanie, I'm
Okay.
sorry, could you please repeat the question that you're posing right now? I'm not.
Yeah. Do the participants in the exercises represent the majority of US citizens? Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a really nice attempt to get a cross section of people with differing beliefs, and I love that about it. So the formula for the film works well. Braver Angels, I think at its best is when you have a 50-50 or close to it that is possible balance of opposing views. So the beauty of it is in the, the the potential for tension. And then the structure of the meetings is what I think is really lacking because it's not part of our default programming. I mean, we live in a very media saturated world that's designed for drop the mic moment, and for people to jump on immediately to the moral high ground or cast the other to some immoral sense of othering, and that's just pervasive. And I think it's a technique that's used more in media than anything else. But you know, the the representative of the population, I mean, what didn't include people who don't have any interest in talking, in these kind of conversations. We still get 50% on a good year to turn out to vote of eligible voters, which I think is a systemic problem. And I think until we can address real systemic problems, like the circus that's happening right now in Chicago and that happened a few weeks ago with the RNC, I would love to see for every term that somebody's serving in office that they only get that number of weeks to campaign. because I don't need 18 months to make a decision for a candidate. So I think systemic things to really get people out, make it easier to vote, make it, like there's a lot of things I think that would be much better spent to get civic engagement happening if we put attention on changing the environment and allowing people to really actively participate. Put polling booths in bars. People have great conversations in bars, and give them a free drink if they vote. And there's
All
lots of
right.
ways.
I'm in favor of that one. Thanks, Matthew. Anna, what do you guys say?
Yeah, I have to say, as I watched the movie, there was a part of my brain that was saying, I wonder, I thought it was a good representation of perspectives, but I wondered in the selection if there was a criteria of people who could express themselves well, because I was so impressed with how articulate people were and how calm, and also wondered if there wasn't a camera on these people and somebody just said that to them, would they have reacted differently? So I did wonder if there was any vetting around there were no real like really obnoxious people, and I've been in a lot of groups and it seems there's always one person who just is jumping in or this, or it just makes it kind of hard. So I wondered if there was also vetting around sort of personalities and appropriateness that gave us kind of a nice, it was a wonderful exercise and I love the movie, but I did wonder if we were given a kind of a wonderful experience that wouldn't necessarily happen if those cameras weren't on and if they hadn't been vetted more so carefully. So that was my question that came up, and not that I need an answer, but I did wonder about that. Yeah, and if you want to answer, yeah.
I can answer, but do you want me to answer, or is that
Yeah,
okay?
I'd love to.
No, go ahead, Christy. Yeah, go ahead.
So the answer is like kind of. So the just the truth of like how the process worked. So we did vet people out for toxicity, like, because if you get somebody who just is interested in coming in there and just yelling about what they believe, that actually does really bad things for the whole focus group. So there were 2 questions on a scale of 1 to 10 that someone had to answer at a 9 or 10 about. One is, can you be friends with somebody who disagrees with you? If you answered at a 9 or 10 that you couldn't, then and you also had to answer at a 9 or 10 that you can't have a conversation with someone who disagrees with you. So those were the 2 questions that if they answered those both at 9 or 10, we automatically disallowed them. They could answer one of those questions at a 9 or 10, but then if they answered the other one, we would be like, oh, okay. At a lower number, we'd be like, okay, let's take a closer look here. So that was a vetting process and my justification for that was that is actually the 20% that I'm not as much interested in. And then your other question was around how interesting they were. So what we did is if people made it kind of past the initial kind of vet, then we would ask them to submit videos. So it's true, I could have like 3 white Republican men kind of videos, all of them answering questions that I could review. And I'm going to pick the person who can put a sentence together the best of those 3, people who are filling that slot for me. So there was some of that vetting going on. But the focus group kind of told us like what they were helping us like craft the characteristic of the folks reflective on those communities. So
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Christy. Yeah, Joan, let's take your answer and we'll move on to the next question.
I was just going to say, I think there is a natural vetting of people who join Braver Angels. They are people that want to talk to each other. So of the group you're going to get that's going to volunteer to be in the film or to come here to talk to Braver Angels, it's going to be someone who wants to bridge the divide in some way or detoxify the anger that goes on. So just in that, because of that, you are getting a group that's less aggressive towards each other. If that's a way to put it. It's just a natural occurrence. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Thanks, Joan. I was wondering, I think maybe we should just go to the next question, Molly, 'cause I think my other question was kind of, we already kind of covered it. So can we just wanna just go on to your question so I can get some of these other ones in?
Yes. So this is a question about the relationships we saw develop that were, not obviously in any way preordained or mandated by what was going on in the film. So the question is, why do you think some of the close friendships formed in the film between people whose views differed so much? So kind of getting at the why there, and then, and or as a corollary, have you had this happen in your own life? And maybe the way that you've had it happen in your own life informs why you think it happened for people in the film. And that's in the chat as well if you want to review that. So think about the friendships we saw in the film and why they were able to, cross a line so easily. I mean, if it was easy, they made it look easy, perhaps. Any thoughts on that? Yeah, go for it, Matthew. Matthew, or Matt Cahill, I saw you raise a hand. No? Okay. Carrie, go for it. And you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like someone just said, if you're open and willing, like my son is conservative, I was more liberal. Now I'm kind of in the middle. So because I'm open to listening to him, I love him and I want to have a good relationship with him and he's really smart. So I listen to his arguments, on the conservative side, and a lot of them make sense to me. So I've moved, but I wasn't surprised that the people in the film, no one moved. Most people are pretty set in their ways. I tried to, when I went to the convention, I was yellow. I pretty much only sat with Republicans because I know what liberals think, so I wanted to learn about the other side. And same with here, like I walk on the beach. There's a guy that's conservative. We have great conversations. I want to learn, but I think that, you have to be curious. You have to want to learn. So a lot of people don't, they're comfortable with their ways of thinking and most people don't want to change their mind, so, and it's not like the news really helps us that much back to that.
Right. So some humility there. Yeah, go for it, Will.
So I appreciate you asking this question. I feel like it's a part of the methodology conversation. I think that the magic that we discussed early on about people trying to understand somebody else was part of the magic. And then it felt like these personal connections beyond the discussion groups seemed like it was a part of the magic of the methodology. And I love what you were just saying, Carrie, that I think we don't maybe want to change our views necessarily, but we also don't want to feel like we only ever hang out with people just like us, that we feel like we're more interesting than that. And we want opportunities to prove that. And we actually would like to have a diverse group of friends, and we'd like to have unique experiences that only happen because we travel or we meet people that are very, very different from us. And, I think the film teased that out a little bit. It showed the teacher and the African-American who was gay, and it showed the two people that disagreed about guns really appreciating one another in their personal lives. And I thought that was great.
Definitely. Yeah, Christy, go for it.
I mean, the one other thing that kind of struck me from those relationships also was that it brought home to me the complexity of all of us as humans. Like, like Matt and Celicia might, like, if you just ask them, are you more for guns or against guns? You know, do they do more good than harm or more harm than good? They're going to be on opposite sides. Like, that's the extreme, right? But then if you start to get under it and like ask them about the questions around the policies, and do you think, you know, should anybody just be able to buy a semi-automatic gun on the internet? Or, you know, I mean, like these other questions that kind of then get at the nuances, the human pieces, suddenly they have a lot more in common. And on other issues, the two of them had tons in common. They might be, one might consider themselves a red and one might consider themselves a blue. But when it came down to like where they were headed and how they wanted to interact with other human beings, they might not have moved on the issues, but in terms of how they felt about people, like each other on the other side, I think those are the things that move. And I think that's kind of one of my takeaways from the film, from making the film, was that, like, you know, I was kind of raised in this, like, you know, you don't talk about, you know, religion or politics in polite conversation. And I think that's just totally wrong. Like, I think it's good for for you to know, hey, that person is a red or a Republican or a Democrat, or they don't know, they're a libertarian, but they're a nuanced human being who actually has lots and lots of like different things that they think about, all kinds of things. And just because they label themselves as this, that doesn't mean that you automatically know everything about them. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, I'm saying like the ability and desire to hear each other's nuances. That once you remove the box that you're in, that actually it's a little more complicated. So go for it, Pat. And then we'll do one more and we'll switch it up.
So something that just jumped out for me as you all were talking about this aspect was, in reality, we could do our best work as a country if we're not trying to change each other's minds, if we are just respectfully listening to one another and realizing that, again, all these nuances make us better and we could solve more problems. I know I'm talking very idealistically, but hey, I'm in Braver Angels. So, but really, that is how we could be better, because we are considering multiple perspectives, not changing minds, just, bringing them together to create something, quite honestly, better. And I also wanted to add about just, bridging just friendships and things of that nature. I mean, recently I did have that personal experience, met somebody new. We clicked right away over, again, a shared background of a sort, right? A shared experience. We've become friends. We are definitely on opposite ends of the political spectrum, but it doesn't matter. And I do feel like we could sit down and have those conversations, and I might at some point, but I think in my case, and I think in her case as well, we could make that pretty comfortable. And maybe using some of my Braver Angels skills too, so.
Cool. We're gonna do a very related question that I love. So Ivan, you want to take us away with the next one?
Sure. Yeah, this is all kind of, we've been touching on this topic already. In the movie, Professor Jennifer Murdashavili, I'm probably boggling the name, says we can't have progress unless we disagree with each other. Disagreement is good. Question for the audience is, do you agree or disagree? Do you practice that? Anybody want to take a stab?
I'm going to repeat that just in case the sound was a little hard for me, Ivan. I'm going to say it again just in case people couldn't hear so well. It was a little muffled. So in the movie, it's in the chat as well. Professor Jennifer Murdashavili says, quote, "We can't have progress unless we disagree with each other. Disagreement is good. Do you agree or disagree?" Donna, I'm not sure if he can see you, so go for it. Donna,
Yeah,
there.
maybe Ivan's having trouble seeing the hands being raised. So I
Sorry.
agree. Yeah, I agree because I think that's how we learn. If we're being honest and vulnerable, we can hopefully admit that we don't know everything and that there may be other points of view that can help to uh, enlighten us, right? I mean, hey, of course, we generally think we're right, huh? And maybe we are right, and maybe we should be sharing our opinion with people that we disagree with, and maybe they'll learn something from us. But I am certainly more than willing to admit I can be wrong, and that when I talk to other people that I disagree with, I certainly can learn something from them.
Thanks, Donna. Margaret, you have your hand up. You want to jump in on this?
Experience when humans remain in a conflict avoidance state, that's not good. People are stifled. So we need to have some disagreement. I think how I would revise, you know, just very slightly, the professor's statement is, maybe we need to be in such a diverse country, we need to be thinking more about how can we attain unity before progress, because the notions of progress have become so mired in political discourse, the language of which has stagnated.
Thanks. I'll just jump in and say that the way I was brought up is to avoid disagreements, especially with strangers, because I lived in a transitional neighborhood and disagreement can lead to fights, actual physical fights. So I'm a conflict avoiding person. Molly, you want to you want to jump in on this one too?
Actually, Mary Adams has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Mary, sorry if I skipped you.
Yeah, I think the trick, and it's what I like about Braver Angels and I like about your movie, Christy, is that it's how you manage the disagreement. But I think it's really important to go underneath it and find out where does your position come from, and with humility, and then we get a more expansive view of the problem, and then that allows you to come up with better solutions. I'm one of the things I'll share quickly because I don't want to take too much time, but I was in a book club, and all of us sort of were on the same page with regard to gun violence. But and the book we were reading was Disability Visibility, and we were talking about these were people with various disabilities that were writing about their lives. And one woman wrote about saying, I feel a need. I'm in a wheelchair. I live alone. I feel very vulnerable. I need to have a gun. I keep a gun near me in the house at night when I'm alone. And I felt so grateful for having read that piece, because it was a reality I'd never even considered existed. So I just think it's real important to have opportunities to listen to people that feel differently about a particular policy or issue than we do, and then to have a space to kind of find out why.
Right. Very good. And Molly, how about closing us out on this one?
Sure. I was raised opposite of Ivan, I think, in many ways, and opposite of Christy too, to embrace disagreement and to not like to jump in and conflict, like argue, but to learn how to disagree really smoothly and make it a discussion. I think argument is when when your blood pressure rises and your heart beats faster, then you know it's an argument. But I would just say that I think I absolutely agree with the statement, partly because I have learned an infinite amount more about any issue when talking with someone I disagree with, because I have to defend my position well and explain it. And so I love debating. I have someone in the community who I'm friends with. Our friendship preceded knowing that our political views were opposite, but he came to the Braver Angels convention, was actually his first event with BA. And we like going out to a bar and just arguing. We like going to meals and arguing. I mean, for us, it's more of a debate. But that's how I was raised to be in the subculture I was in, and I actually will say it is I feel like it's the only way progress is made, because people will always disagree in society and in Congress. And if you disagree and go to your separate camps, then you don't make legislation. I mean, in the extreme example, you can't write legislation that enough people will sign on to unless you have the majority that it would require. So similarly, you can't advance on an issue unless you're willing to disagree, but obviously in healthy and respectful ways. And I'll just say that one thing a couple Braver Angels friends other Braver Angels friends as well, and I and this friend I mentioned, I think we actually like disagreeing with each other. We like the way it forces us to learn and defend our point and become stronger intellectually. And we also like giving each other a little crap. Like, it's fun to give each other a little flack, and we tease each other about things too. I mean, disagreement can be a lot of fun when you're doing it that way. So that's my experience.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Molly, actually, but I separate the scenarios between friends and strangers. I won't disagree in a group of strangers, and I'll disagree the crap out of my friends. So it just depends on the setting. Sandy, did you want to add a last note on this?
Sure, thanks. I just wanted to add that if we lived in a society that people didn't disagree, then it would be either some kind of dictatorship or some kind of mind control. And I think in a democracy, if people didn't disagree in the higher levels, and say you were president or something, and everyone just agreed with whatever you said, obviously the decisions would be horrible. So in a democracy, especially, and for business leaders, they need their colleagues to disagree with them so they can make better decisions. So I think it's important for both reasons, so that we avoid dictatorship and mind control, and so we come up with better decisions.
All right, thanks a lot, Sandy. That's a nice want to close that question out. The last question for tonight, Tony Woodleaf, who is one of the organizers in the discussion, says that the system was set up so we could all live the way we want in our own communities, rather than having top-down decision-making and polarization. What I wondered is, should we then all seek to live in politically homogeneous communities? You want to jump in on that, Sandy? You're shaking your head.
Well, then again, it's the same kind of thing. If you all lived in a place where everyone thought it just soon, there's some kind of mind control or a lack of awareness, or I don't know, some 1984 kind of, sci-fi. I thought that was odd in the movie too. It just seemed like, no, we don't want people to do that. I think I personally naturally do that to myself. And I hang out with people who think the same thing as me. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to join Braver Angels, is because I'm not strong enough to do it by myself, and I need a structure to help me do this, hopefully.
Yeah, and I agree. But I think the reality is people are moving to more homogeneous communities. Mary, you want to chime in on this?
I wondered if his intention there was that in a smaller community you can listen better and have conversations and come to a consensus that is so not necessarily that it would be a homogeneous community, but on a smaller level, it's easier to find solutions and to compromise and manage a particular issue with a smaller group of people who are neighbors and relate to each
Right.
other and so on.
Right. All right, that's an angle. Anybody else? Others, we'll close out tonight's. Oh, Joan, your hand. I saw your hand up, and then you want to start.
Oh God, yes. I think when people come here from other countries, immigrants, they tend to live in homogeneous communities. As they've been here, the first generation, the second generation, the third, they move out. I don't think we should seek to live in politically homogeneous communities. I think it's better to be able to talk to each other, because if you live in a homogeneous community, you're in an echo chamber. And if you live in a community where people think differently, at least you get other ideas and you can figure what might be the best way, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But I don't think homogeneous communities are great. It's just you do that because you're coming from another country here and it's so different, you want to be amongst your own. But after that, your kids, I think it's better, the diversity.
Right. Well, I take your point. David, you want to be the last speaker on this?
Yes, I agree with what was just said. I found this assertion in the movie kind of disturbing. I think we need to learn how to get along together as a country. People with particularly from a political standpoint, we can't just all the red people can't just say, well, I'm going to move to rural South or rural Midwest because I only want to live around red people, and all the blue people can't say, well, I'm going to move to, San Francisco or New York or wherever because I only want to live around blue people. I find that very disconcerting. I think we need to learn how to get along with people that don't necessarily have the same political beliefs as we do.
Right. No, I agree. We just did a film a month or two ago about the secession movement in Eastern Oregon, where it's not people moving together, it's just they're the ones left in rural Oregon who now feel themselves separated and voiceless compared to all the liberals in Portland. And so they want to join Idaho. I think it's a good thing to want to live among a diverse population, but if you're always the last one served, or you feel like you're the last one served, then I can completely understand that you feel abandoned and you want to move to someplace else. Carrie, did you want to be the last quick one? Oh, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just want to say I live in San Francisco, so I am living that. And I mean, of course, there are Republicans and different people here, but yeah, I get tired of it. And my son, when he was 16, he's now 23, he started a conservative club in high school. And I kind of thought, like, good luck with that, because who's going to show up? Where are the Republicans? And kids came out of the woodwork and they said, I felt like I couldn't voice my opinion because I am conservative. And they had these great discussions and I was envious. And so we were in Houston last October for his birthday, and that's how I found Braver Angels. I Googled, discussion groups, and I found Braver Angels. So, but yeah, I'm right there. I wish that San Francisco were more diverse, or that, and I also think part of it is that Democrats, I'm being very, I think that it's that Democrats tend to want to, I mean, this was told in the Braver Angels, one of the podcasts that they just did, about Democrats tend to want to understand the group, and Republicans might have a different idea of what their group is. It might be their church or their family, and they're not
Right.
so it's just different. But yes, I crave different opinions.
All right. Well, that's something we can certainly all agree on here. Molly, please talk about us joining Braver Angels, and I'll talk about the next film.
Awesome. Huge thanks for everyone who participated, whether by talking or listening or weighing in on the chat tonight. Carrie, you couldn't have led in better to what I'm about to say. Craving different opinions, craving people around us who are more diverse is a reason many of us actually joined Braver Angels. And for folks who don't know, one of the things that's really fascinating and inclusive about Braver Angels is that you can actually become a member for as little as $1 a month. Braver Angels runs on a really slim staff, but it's all the organization, which none of us work for, we're all volunteers. All the organization asks is to become a member if you can here. Up at the top, you'll see the membership option. It says join. There's also a member login, because once you are a member, there's some access to different discussions and so on that you can access because you're a member. But also it's just it's a really easy way to show support. And I can say, as someone who has now been involved actually for 4 years and a few months, that it has been and continues to be an extremely life-changing experience for myself. Actually, the convention was like the height of the height. So if you can go to that, the next one. But always look forward to these discussions every month. And it took me a little while to become a member, and I can't believe that, because it was $12. So definitely don't wait as long as I did. Yeah, so that's just wanted to give a little pitch here, and then someone is going to introduce
I am.
the next film.
Yes, thanks, Molly. We have decided on the next film. The film is called Shot in the Arm. It's about how vaccination and all that stuff we went through back in 2020, how that has become so politicized. Now, we don't have the date for that next meeting yet. Please keep a watch on the Film Club website or look at the Braver Angels newsletter, and we will post it as soon as it's decided. But until then, thank you, everybody.